She met him on a rainy evening in a downtown bookstore, where the world seemed quieter, as if the storm outside muffled the noise of their chaotic lives. Amelia Wren had always lived life by the rules, structured, methodical, controlled. She had her own thriving flower business, a gentle heart, and an engagement ring from a man who treated her with kindness, but ignited no fire in her soul. Then came Asher Locke, a brooding, magnetic presence with an enigmatic past and eyes that looked like they had seen too much, felt too deeply. He wasn't supposed to matter. It was just a stranger at a poetry reading, a fleeting conversation about Neruda and heartbreak. But the moment he said her name like it was a secret prayer, something inside her cracked open. She knew she was in danger of breaking every rule she'd ever lived by. Asher was everything her life warned her against. Unfiltered, unpredictable, emotionally chaotic. He was an artist who lived in the moment, painting sorrow onto canvas like it was the only language he knew. Yet Amelia kept coming back. They saw each other once, then again, and then more until days bled into nights and her heart became a battlefield between duty and desire. He challenged her. He saw through her carefully built walls. He made her laugh, cry, scream, and then when she thought she had found a home in him, he vanished. No calls, no notes, no messages, just silence. Weeks passed, then months. Amelia unraveled. She broke off her engagement. She lost herself in her work, trying to forget a man who seemed made of smoke and fire. Until one day, without warning, he showed up at her flower shop, rain-drenched and hollow-eyed, whispering her name with the same quiet desperation she hadn't heard since their first night. But this time, there were bruises on his face, a limp in his step, and secrets clinging to him like shadows. He told her everything, or so she thought. A sick mother, debts owed to people who didn't ask politely, a dangerous world he had to walk away from to protect her. She forgave him, against her better judgment, because love makes fools of the strongest people. Their reunion was a storm of passion and recklessness. They made love like it was both a beginning and an ending. He moved into her apartment, painted again, and for a few fragile weeks, life felt like a poem they were writing together. But then came the signs, phone calls he wouldn't take in front of her, a woman's name whispered in his sleep, an envelope of cash hidden in a book, and then the worst, an overheard conversation with a stranger in a cafe where Asher said he didn't love her, that it was just a means to an end. She confronted him. He denied it, told her it was all part of a plan to get someone dangerous off his back, that she was the only real thing in his life. She didn't believe him. Or maybe she did, and that made it worse. So she kicked him out, blocked his number, swore she'd never speak his name again. But heartbreak is not a clean wound. It festers. It reopens at the smell of paint or the touch of old poems. Months passed again, and she tried to rebuild. Until one night, while walking home from a late wedding delivery, she found him standing outside her apartment, drunk, bleeding, and whispering apologies like they were bleeding from his soul. And when he collapsed into her arms, something in her broke open once more. She let him in, let him touch her, let him destroy every boundary she had rebuilt. And in the morning, she woke up alone again, except this time, he left behind a letter, one that ended with, "I had to disappear before they found you, but I will come back when I've burned every bridge that threatens you. If you still want me, then I'll beg for your love again." And that morning, Amelia whispered to herself, "I'll never forgive him again." But her heart had already started waiting. 3 months passed, and Amelia Wren hadn't heard a single word from Asher Locke. The letter he left behind was tucked into a drawer she never opened, but its words haunted her all the same. She kept working, kept breathing, kept pretending. She didn't flinch every time the bell above her flower shop door rang. Her friends told her she was better off. Her therapist told her to focus on the now. But her heart refused logic. It pulsed in memory, in ghost touches, in dreams where his voice called her name and vanished before she could reach him. And then, as the calendar flipped into spring, he returned. He didn't knock on her door or walk into the shop. Instead, she saw him on the street corner across from the cafe she always went to on Thursday mornings. He stood there, still as a statue, watching her. She pretended not to see, but the tremble in her hands gave her away. The next day, he was there again, and again the next. For a week, he just stood there, never approached, never spoke, just watched. It was maddening, and heartbreaking, and cruel. So finally, on the 7th morning, She crossed the street and walked up to him. He looked older, thinner. His jaw was bruised again, his eyes sunken with exhaustion. He smiled when he saw her, like he'd been drowning and had finally surfaced. "I didn't want to scare you," he said. "I just wanted to see you." She told him to stop watching her, to go, to disappear again, this time forever. But instead of leaving, he said the words that unraveled her. "I kept my promise. They're gone. I did everything I said I would, and I came back for you." She didn't know whether to cry or slap him. Maybe both. But she let him walk beside her that day. Let him talk. He told her pieces of what he'd been through, fleeing the city, settling debts with people who spoke in threats and blood, hiding in small towns and painting under false names. He showed her scars, literal ones on his body, emotional ones in his voice, and still, she didn't let him back in. But she didn't push him away either. They began to meet in secret places. A rooftop she loved, the bench outside the gallery, where he once kissed her under moonlight. Every conversation was a knife cutting into old wounds, into trust, into temptation. And still, she couldn't stop herself from falling again. Maybe she never stopped. Then came the gallery offer. A well-known collector discovered Asher's underground work and wanted to host a solo exhibition in New York. It was everything he once dreamed of before his life turned to ashes. But accepting it meant leaving again. And this time, he wanted Amelia to come with him. She said no. She had her business, her life, her walls finally rebuilt. But when he kissed her that night, desperate and aching, it felt like the first time. All over again. "Tell me not to go," he whispered, forehead pressed against hers. "And I'll stay. I'll give it all up." But she didn't, couldn't, wouldn't be the reason he gave up his dreams. Not again. So he left, and for 2 months, she heard nothing, until her shop's grand reopening after renovation, when a delivery arrived, an enormous painting. Her name was on the tag. No message, just the artwork, a chaotic, raw, beautiful portrait of her sleeping, surrounded by the same flowers she used to sell. It took her breath away. On the back was a signature, "AL come find me," and below that, an address in Manhattan. Heart pounding, she told herself she wouldn't go. But 2 days later, she was on a train. What she found wasn't what she expected. Asher was successful, now almost unrecognizably so. His paintings hung in luxury spaces. He wore tailored clothes. He was clean-shaven, confident. But when he opened the door to his new apartment and saw her, all that confidence fell away. "I didn't think you'd come," he breathed. She stood in the doorway, trembling. "You broke me, Asher," she said, eyes burning. "And I hate that I still want to fall apart in your arms." He stepped forward, cupped her face, and whispered, "Then fall. I'll hold you this time." She didn't answer, just let him kiss her. But as they undressed each other, as their bodies tangled in a storm of rediscovered want, neither of them noticed the envelope on the kitchen counter. The one marked "Urgent Final Warning," or the red ink beneath it that spelled her name. And when the doorbell rang an hour later, loud and sudden, it wasn't just a delivery. It was a reckoning. The knock at the door was loud, deliberate, and repeated. Asher froze, tangled in the sheets, his bare chest rising and falling with the knees. Amelia sat up slowly, sheets clutched to her chest, her breath catching in her throat. They looked at each other, and for the first time since she arrived, the fear in his eyes returned, the same kind that had shadowed him the last time he disappeared. "Don't move," he whispered. He pulled on his jeans and disappeared down the hallway. Amelia listened intently, her pulse echoing in her ears as the door creaked open. Then came the low rumble of a male voice, and then another. Heated words exchanged in hushed tones. Asher's voice rose, sharp and defensive. And then a crash. She scrambled out of bed and hurried to the living room, barefoot and breathless, just in time to see 2 men in black jackets shove Asher against the wall. One of them turned and locked eyes with her, and in that instant, she knew this wasn't over. Not even close. "Get back inside," the man snapped. "No," Amelia said, stepping forward. "What's going on?" But Asher's voice, hoarse and full of panic, cut through the tension. Don't, please, just go back. This is between me and them." But it wasn't. Not anymore. Because the moment one of the men pulled out a photograph, her photograph, and waved it in Asher's face, everything tilted sideways. You think hiding behind art changes what you owe? You think painting her makes her invisible to us? We warned you, Asher. They left a warning, shoved it into his chest, and walked out as fast as they'd come. Asher stood frozen, blood seeping from his lip. Amelia stared at him like she didn't know who he was anymore. What the hell was that? She asked. He sat down, suddenly looking older, smaller. They're not gone, Amelia. I tried. I thought I bought us time. I didn't. It came out in pieces then. How he used money from a dangerous investor to fund his early work. How he was supposed to disappear for good. How the art show made him visible again. And how they had found out that the woman he painted, again and again, was real, traceable, vulnerable. You brought this to my doorstep, she whispered. You said it was over. I thought it was, he murmured. I came back for you because I believed I could fix it, but I can't outrun them. And now I've dragged you back into the fire. She packed her things, told him goodbye. He didn't stop her. Back in her city, Amelia buried herself in routine. Flowers, orders, sleep, denial. But her mind kept circling back. The fear in his eyes, the way his hands shook when he looked at her, the truth in his pain. Then one day, a man showed up at her shop. He wore a crisp suit, a gentle smile, and eyes that didn't match either. Miss Wren, he said politely, we need to talk about Asher Locke. She didn't let him in, but he left a card. When you're ready, he said. It's about protecting him and yourself. She ignored it for 3 days. Then she called. What followed felt more like a spy novel than real life. Hidden debts, a syndicate laundering money through art. Asher had unknowingly tied himself to one of the most dangerous underworld networks in the country. And now his rising fame made him a liability. The man offered her a deal, convince Asher to walk away from painting publicly, disappear permanently, and they'd leave both of them alone. Or, he said, they'll do what they always do with people who can't keep secrets. She boarded a train to Manhattan that same night. Asher opened the door like he hadn't slept in days. When she told him what she'd learned, he laughed a bitter, broken sound. So I have to give it all up again. My work, my name, everything. She didn't respond. Instead, she reached for him, held his face between her hands. I would give up everything, she said, if it meant I didn't lose you again. They spent one last night together, not in desperation but in slow, sacred love. No words, just touch, as if trying to memorize each other. A T dawn, he disappeared. No note this time, no painting, no message, only the echo of his voice in her memory saying, if I survive this, I'll find you again. 6 weeks later, she received a single package. Inside was a sketchbook, filled with drawings of her sleeping, laughing, crying, living. And on the last page, scrawled in charcoal, for every time I broke your heart, I loved you more than I knew how to hold. But on that same day, a headline broke the internet. Famed underground artist Asher Locke confirmed dead in warehouse fire, and Amelia collapsed to the floor, the sketchbook pressed to her chest. But what she didn't see, what the media missed, was a single grainy photograph. In a cafe across the world, a man with paint-stained hands, a scarf wrapped around his face, watching the rain, waiting. The days that followed were a blur of grief wrapped in denial. Amelia moved through them like a sleepwalker, opening the shop, arranging bouquets, answering customers with a practiced smile that cracked the moment she was alone. The headlines hadn't changed. Warehouse fire claims artist's life. Asher Locke presumed dead. There were no remains, only ashes, paint, and scorched canvases pulled from the ruin. No one claimed his body because there wasn't one. Just a locket she once gave him, melted and found near the blaze. That was enough for them to close the file. But not for her, because something didn't sit right. Asher was many things: reckless, passionate, self-destructive. But careless? Never. Not with her. Not when he had fought so hard to keep her safe. She reread the sketchbook countless times, every drawing traced by fingers trembling with what-ifs. The final message haunted her. For every time I broke your heart, I loved you more than I knew how to hold. It didn't feel like a goodbye. It felt like a breadcrumb. Then came the photograph, slid beneath her shop's front door late one night. No envelope, no note, just the image, grainy, black and white, taken from across a cafe window in Istanbul. The man was hunched, face partially obscured, but the posture, the slope of his shoulders, the smudge of charcoal on his knuckles, it was him. She stared at it for hours. Logic told her it was impossible, but her heart said otherwise. The next morning, Amelia did something she'd never done in her entire life. She bought a one-way ticket to Istanbul. Her friends begged her to reconsider. Her mother thought she was unraveling. Her therapist said this was a trauma response. But none of it mattered. She had loved Asher Locke in 1,000 messy, impossible ways, and now, if there was even a sliver of a chance he was alive, she had to know. Istanbul was a city of layers of hidden alleys, midnight prayer calls, and flickers of color against crumbling stone. She wandered for days, clutching the photo, asking questions in broken Turkish, chasing shadows and whispers. A local gallery owner recognized the man in the picture, said he sometimes sold paintings to tourists under the name Laz. No address, no last name, just a ghost in the city's underground art scene. She followed rumors like a bloodhound. A street mural with Asher's signature brushstroke technique. A sketch found in a cafe's trash can that mirrored a piece he once gave her. A charcoal drawing of her face, unsigned, tacked to a fence near the Bosphorus. And then she found him in a converted warehouse by the docks, hidden behind rows of colorful market stalls. She stepped into an art space that pulsed with raw emotion. The air smelled of paint thinner and rain. At the far end, a man stood with his back to her, painting a canvas in fevered strokes. He wore a dark hoodie, hands stained with color. She didn't call his name. She stepped closer, and when the floor creaked beneath her, he turned. It was him, gaunt, bruised beneath his eyes, his beard longer, hair unruly but undeniably him. The moment their eyes met, the world tilted. Paint dripped to the floor. Time stopped. Asher, she whispered. He didn't move, didn't breathe. Then hoarsely, "You weren't supposed to find me." She stepped forward, chest shaking. "And yet, here I am." He closed his eyes, pained. "You saw the fire. I saw the lie." Tears welled in his eyes, but he didn't let them fall. "I did it to protect you. I knew they wouldn't stop unless I disappeared completely. I made them believe I died. I left everything you because I couldn't stand the idea of you being hunted because of me. And you didn't think I'd come looking?" She snapped. "You left me with ashes." Again. His voice broke. "I couldn't ask you to live like this." "You didn't ask," she said. "You decided. You broke me, Asher." Again. "And now I don't know whether to scream at you or kiss you." He stepped forward cautiously. "Do both. I'll take it. I'll take anything if it means I get even one more moment with you." She hit him then, once, across the chest, fists trembling with grief and fury. And then she kissed him, desperate, gasping, lost. They clung to each other like survivors of a shipwreck. That night, they made love on a mattress pushed against a wall of drying canvases, surrounded by portraits of her face in every mood, every light. He had never stopped painting her, even when he thought he'd never see her again. In the morning, she sat on the floor wrapped in a blanket, watching him sleep. But as the sun rose and light spilled across the floor, her gaze drifted to a manila folder half tucked beneath a crate of brushes. She pulled it free, curiosity twisting in her gut. Inside were sketches of her, wounded, bleeding, running, and on the last page a map with her flower shop circled in red ink. Below it, one word, Target. Her blood turned to ice. "Asher," she whispered. He stirred, groggy. "What?" She held up the folder with trembling hands. "What the hell is this?" And as he sat up and looked at her, his expression changed. To something she hadn't seen before, fear. But not for himself, for her. Asher stared at the folder like it had crawled out of a nightmare he thought he'd buried. The color drained from his face. His mouth opened but no words came. Amelia held it tighter, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. "Tell me this isn't yours," she whispered, eyes wide. "Tell me this isn't what I think it is." He didn't answer. Instead, he reached for the folder, but she yanked it back, stepping away. "Don't," she said sharply. "Don't touch me. Don't lie to me again." Finally, his voice emerged low, shaken, almost unrecognizable. "It's not what it looks like." She laughed, bitter and breaking. "It never is, Asher. But I keep ending up broken every time I believe you." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing, frantic. "Those sketches, those were sent to me weeks ago. I didn't know who they were from. No return address, no name. Just threats, promises, warnings." He turned to her, eyes burning. "They know everything, Em. They know your routines, your flower shop, your friends. They've been watching you ever since I came back. The moment I touched your life again, they made you a pawn." Amelia's voice shook. "So why didn't you tell me?" "Because I thought I could handle it," he said, voice rising with anguish. I thought if I stayed away, if I kept them distracted, if I painted fast enough, paid enough, disappeared deep enough, they'd leave you alone. But they didn't. Her voice cracked. They didn't, Asher. And now I'm in another country, alone with you, and someone is still out there planning something. And I don't even know what kind of hell I've walked into this time. He came closer slowly, like she was an animal ready to bolt. I didn't bring you into this. You followed the ghost of me. You walked back into the fire. Because I love you, she whispered, tears sliding down her face. And you keep using that love like a shield, like a weapon. You say you're trying to protect me, but all you ever do is break me. The silence between them stretched like a wire pulled too tight. Then she grabbed her bag. I'm leaving, she said. Tonight, I don't care what unfinished war you're still fighting, I won't let your ghosts kill me too. She slammed the door on her way out, but danger had a way of following her now. She barely made it to blocks before she realized she was being watched, not just by the familiar chaos of Istanbul's streets but by someone trailing her. A man, in a brown leather jacket, blending in, never approaching, just following. She turned corners, took a cab, walked into crowded places and waited. But each time she thought she lost him, he was there again. And by the time she reached her hotel, panic was a physical thing in her throat. She texted Asher, don't follow me, don't call, but someone is following me now. He didn't reply. Instead, 30 minutes later, someone knocked on her hotel door. She stood frozen, heart pounding, phone in her hand. Another knock. Cautiously, she crept to the peephole. It wasn't Asher. It was the man in the leather jacket. She didn't open it, just stared, trembling, watching him slip an envelope under the door before walking away. Inside it was a phone and a note. Pick up when it rings. You'll want to hear this. She stared at it, sick to her stomach. Minutes passed. Then the phone rang. She answered. The voice on the other end was calm, smooth, British. You don't know me, Amelia, but I know everything about you. And Asher. Who are you? Someone who's been watching him for a long time. Someone who used to trust him. And someone who thinks you deserve to know the truth about the man you keep forgiving. I already know who he is. No, the voice said. You don't. Because Asher Locke is not just an artist. He's the reason half of my operation went down 3 years ago. He's the reason men are dead. And you, sweet Amelia, are his last loose end. She felt the blood drain from her face. What do you want from me? I want you to make a choice. Stay out of it. Go home. Live your perfect little life. Or keep chasing his shadow and end up as collateral damage. Again, the line went dead. That night, Amelia didn't sleep, and by morning, the sketches from the folder haunted her dreams. Their precision, their cruelty. She realized something with cold finality. They weren't just warnings, they were plans, and Asher hadn't just drawn her to him. He'd marked her for destruction. So she went back to the warehouse, but not to forgive him. This time, she came to ask the question she never had the courage to before. Who were you before you were mine? But Asher wasn't there. The studio was empty. The paintings were gone, and on the wall, in bold red paint, 3 words screamed back at her. They found me, and beneath it, scrawled in the frantic handwriting she knew too well, run. Amelia ran. She didn't pack, didn't think. Her instincts took over, ancient and primal, forged in months of heartbreak and weeks of creeping dread. She bolted from the warehouse, weaving through the crowded streets of Istanbul, heart slamming against her ribs like a war drum. Every face became a threat, every shadow a trap. She didn't know where she was going, only that staying meant danger, death, the end. She ducked into a public restroom, locked the stall, and pulled out the burner phone. No messages, no calls, just the eerie stillness of betrayal hanging in the air. She thought about calling the embassy, the police, someone, but a small voice in her head whispered, they're already in it. Or worse, they're watching. Asher had tried to protect her. Or had he? Was he hero or villain, victim or trigger? The lines were blurring faster than her thoughts could catch them. She changed SIM cards, burned the note, bought a scarf to cover her hair, and took the long route to a hotel far outside the city center, one with no cameras, no online bookings, and a lock that screeched when she turned it. There, she finally sat down, face in her hands, trembling. She wanted to cry, to scream, to feel, but she was numb until midnight. That's when the phone rang. Her heart stopped. She let it ring once, twice, 3 times, then answered. Asher? She whispered. A pause. Then, don't speak. Just listen. His voice was ragged, out of breath, distant. They're not who you think. The people in the suits, the ones who threatened you, they're not just criminals. They're not, even after the money anymore. They're after what I know, what I painted, what I saw. What does that mean? I got out, I got out for you. I ran from the syndicate, yes, but I also ran from the people who hired me to get close to them in the first place. The ones who funded the paintings, who commissioned me to gather secrets inside the art world and hide them in my canvases. That fire? That was them cleaning up their mess. Silence. She pressed the phone tighter. So you were a spy? No, he breathed. I was a mistake. Amelia couldn't breathe. And me? What was I? Another long pause. Then, the only real thing. The only thing I didn't fabricate. And now they want you gone because they think I told you something. Or worse, that I will. Her voice was hollow. And did you? No, but I will. If you're brave enough to meet me. One last time. Where? I left the map inside the painting, he said. The one I sent to your shop. The portrait of you sleeping. I marked it. I knew one day I'd need you to follow it. The call ended. She stared at the phone like it had become a bomb, and then she remembered. The painting. She hadn't sold it. She'd kept it stored in the back room of her shop, unframed, unopened, folded in brown paper, untouched since the day it arrived. She needed to go back to the place she'd fled, back to where everything started, back to the scene of her first heartbreak. She took the next flight to New York, a red eye full of jittery nerves and silent dread. She didn't sleep, couldn't. Every memory of Asher, every lie and kiss and apology played on repeat like an old film she couldn't turn off. When she arrived, it was pouring rain. Of course it was. The shop was just as she'd left it, dusty, silent, waiting. She unlocked the back room, pulled out the package, peeled away the paper like unwrapping a wound, and there it was, her sleeping face, soft and raw in charcoal and oil. But now, looking closer, she saw it, a faint imprint beneath her pillow in the painting, barely visible, a smudge. She rubbed it with the side of her thumb and felt a shift in the paint, like it had been layered over. She scraped gently with the corner of a key until the top layer gave way, and there, revealed in ink beneath the surface, was a set of coordinates, 44367N, 296 for Efrance, southern France, a tiny, nearly invisible village near the edge of the Cévennes. She booked a train that same hour. No hesitation this time. The closer she got to him, the more alive she felt. The fear remained, but it was chased by something bigger, something desperate and hungry and unkillable. Hope. She arrived at dawn. The town was sleepy, almost to quiet. Stone cottages, mist rising from the hills, the scent of bread and lavender thick in the air, and just beyond the edge of the village, on a dirt path barely marked, she found the house, old, abandoned, except for the easel visible through the cracked window, and the light on inside. She pushed the door open slowly, heart climbing into her throat. Asher? She called out. No response. She walked in. The walls were covered in paintings, hundreds of them. Her face, her eyes, her hands reaching for something unseen. Her soul poured into brushstrokes by a man who loved her like a religion and broke her, like a war. And then she saw him, slumped in the corner, blood on his shirt, eyes barely open. She fell to her knees. Asher, Asher? Know what happened? He tried to speak, coughed, reached out a trembling hand. They found me, he rasped, but I didn't tell them. I wouldn't. Her tears fell like rain. You're going to be okay. I'll get help. I know, he whispered. No time. Just listen. He pressed something into her hand. A flash drive. Everything's on this. Everything they did. Everything I saw. Give it to the right people. Make it mean something. Her hand trembled around it. I don't care about the truth. I just want you to live. But his eyes were already fading. He smiled, faint and broken. You were always the only thing real. And then he was gone. She screamed, shook him, begged, but the light left his body like a slow wave, and Amelia Wren, for the first time in her life, felt what it meant to be truly, utterly alone. She stayed with him until the sun rose higher. Then, she wiped her tears, took the drive, and walked into the world with a heart that had been shattered again, but this time, with a fire in her eyes that no one would ever be able to extinguish, because they broke her, and now, she would make them beg. The funeral was quiet. There was no ceremony, no eulogy, no proper goodbye. Just Amelia, a priest who didn't ask questions, and a patch of soft earth beneath a tree overlooking the hills of southern France. She buried him in the clothes he died in, his paint-stained hands folded across his chest, the flash drive pressed against his heart. She couldn't bring herself to keep it on her. Not yet. Not until she understood what it had cost him. The villagers never asked who he was. In a place like this, people respected silence. They nodded politely when she passed, offered warm bread and herbs for the pain, but no one probed. She stayed in the cottage for 3 days, surrounded by the paintings of her self-portraits done in shadow and fire, longing and love, grief and guilt. On the 4th morning, she opened the flash drive. Inside was a storm, encrypted folders, audio recordings, documents, names, banks, photos of faces that had been on wanted lists for decades, and then a video file labeled, "For Amelia." She hesitated, then clicked. The screen filled with Asher's face. Alive, still whole. He sat in the same room she now stood in, back against the wall, hair damp, a cigarette burning in his fingers. "I don't know if you'll ever see this," he began. His voice was rough, tired, but his eyes held their old fire. "But if you do, I'm gone. Or I've run so far even I can't find myself. Either way, I need you to know everything." And he told her about the agent who first found him, the government-funded initiative to embed artists in criminal networks, how his paintings were coded intelligence brushstrokes layered with secrets, colors that revealed bank account numbers under UV light, landscapes that doubled as maps. He had once believed in it, believed he was doing something good, but then came the betrayal. They sacrificed his team, blamed him for the fallout, and when he tried to run, they let him knowing he'd never stop painting, never stop documenting. He was the loose end they couldn't sever. "I was supposed to disappear," he said, rubbing his eyes. "Then I met you." He smiled, soft and sad. "You were the one thing they couldn't control, the one truth in all the lies. And I tried so hard to protect you, but I failed, over and over. And I'm sorry." Tears slipped silently down her cheeks as he finished. "If you're watching this, don't hide. Don't let them win. Burn me to the ground if you have to, but don't let them bury you too." The screen went black. She sat there for hours, surrounded by ghosts. Then she got to work. She uploaded the files to 3 different journalists, each known for taking down giants. She sent anonymous tips to the agencies Asher once worked for, attached with damning proof. She built a story, a trail, a fire, the kind that couldn't be put out. And when it hit the news a week later, the world exploded. Global art syndicate exposed as front for intelligence smuggling. Paintings used to launder secrets. Key operative dead in France. Whistleblower. Upload triggers international arrests. They never named her. They never knew where it came from. But the damage was done. The monster that had haunted their lives was bleeding. Still, she knew it wasn't over. They would come looking for the files, for the truth, for revenge. So Amelia vanished. She sold her shop, cut her hair, traveled under a different name, but she didn't run like she used to, not out of fear. This time, she carried Asher's fire, and the next time someone followed her down a quiet alley in Lisbon, she turned. "You're not the first," she said, eyes sharp, voice cold, "and you won't be the last. So if you're going to try and kill me, don't miss." The man backed off. Word must have spread. She became myth, the girl who loved the ghost, the one who turned pain into vengeance, the one who survived Asher. Lock and burned the world for him. Years passed, and then one day, on a spring morning in a sleepy village in Portugal, she walked into a bookstore and saw a painting hanging in the back. Small, quiet, a woman sitting by a window, face turned toward the sun. Her face, and in the bottom right corner, a signature, AL. She froze, her hands trembled. She turned slowly, scanning the store, and there behind the counter stood a man with charcoal on his fingers, older, scarred, alive. Their eyes met. Neither of them moved until he whispered, almost inaudibly, the only words that could have shattered the years between them. "I told you I'd beg for your love again." And Amelia Wren finally smiled, because some ghosts don't die, some loves don't fade, and some hearts, no matter how broken, always find their way back.